My family obligated me to babysit their children every Christmas while they celebrated and enjoyed themselves. However, last year I declared I was finished. My malicious older sister threatened to retaliate by withdrawing financial support for my college education, so I ceased all communication with them. My name is Ruby, and I entered this world as a seeming afterthought, 12 years after my eldest sister Sarah and 10 years after Emma. By the time I was forming my earliest coherent recollections, they were well into their adolescence, more preoccupied with boys and cosmetics than interacting with their baby sister. Our suburban Minnesota home constantly resonated with my parents boasting about their older daughters. Sarah received straight A's again, they would exclaim at dinner. Emma made the cheerleading squad. They'd pronounce to anyone within earshot. I would sit there, shuffling peas around my plate, feeling like an apparition in my own house. I recall the day Sarah brought home her first boyfriend at 16. I was only 4, observing from the staircase railing as this lanky, spiky-haired boy nervously shook my father's hand. Emma followed suit shortly after, beginning to date at 15. They were both so stunning, so self-assured, so everything I wasn't yet. "Ruby, complete your homework," Mom would say, scarcely glancing at me while assisting Sarah with choosing prom dresses or discussing college applications with Emma. I learned early to be independent, to occupy myself, to not require the attention that seemed perpetually directed towards my sister's accomplishments. "Did you hear?" Mom rushed into the kitchen one morning when I was 7. Sarah got accepted to Northwestern. The news was met with celebratory pancakes, while I remained in my usual spot, unseen as always. Emma departed for college 2 years later, and suddenly I was alone in a house that felt simultaneously too vacant and too filled with their lingering presence. Their bedrooms became memorials to their past lives, trophies, photographs, and mementos preserved precisely as they had left them. Meanwhile, I created my own niche, learned to find solace in solitude, and attempted to ignore how every conversation inevitably returned to my remarkable older sisters. The crucial turning point occurred when I was 15. Sarah, now married and residing across town, gave birth to her first child, a son named Tyler. I distinctly remember the day she brought him home from the hospital. Everyone was cooing and weeping, my parents practically levitating with joy at becoming grandparents. "You'll be such a wonderful aunt," Mom said, squeezing my shoulder. Looking back, I realized that was the moment everything began to change, though I couldn't have grasped it then. Initially, I was genuinely thrilled about being an aunt. Tyler was adorable, and I enjoyed making funny faces at him while Sarah and Mom conversed over coffee. However, that dynamic shifted more rapidly than I could have anticipated. It commenced with what appeared to be an innocuous request one Saturday morning. "Ruby, could you watch Tyler for a couple of hours?" "I really need to do some shopping," Sarah asked, already slinging her purse over her shoulder before I could even reply. She placed Tyler in my arms and headed for the door. "Thanks, sis. You're the best." That became the new routine. Every weekend, Sarah would arrive at our parents' house, hand over Tyler, and vanish for hours. Sometimes it was shopping, other times lunch with friends, or a spa day, always under the pretext of needing a respite from motherhood. "It's not fair," I complained to Mom one day after Sarah had been gone for 5 hours. "I had plans to meet Jenny at the mall today." Mom barely glanced up from her magazine. "Family helps family, Ruby. Your sister needs this time to herself. You'll understand when you're a mother." I was 16 when Emma announced she was pregnant. "It's a girl," she shrieked at the family dinner. While everyone rejoiced, I felt a knot tightening in my stomach. Sure enough, when little Sophie arrived, history repeated itself with a vengeance. Now my weekends were a chaotic juggling act of managing a 3-year-old Tyler and baby Sophie. Try assisting a toddler with building block towers while simultaneously attempting to soothe a crying infant. It's not as enjoyable as it sounds. And homework? Forget about it until they were both napping, if they ever napped at the same time. "Jason asked me to the movies tonight," I told Dad one Saturday while bouncing Sophie on my hip and watching Tyler color on our coffee table instead of his coloring book. "Well, you should have considered that before agreeing to watch the kids," he retorted. "I never agreed. Nobody ever asks me." The exasperation in my voice caused Sophie to start crying. "Lower your voice. You're upsetting the baby," Mom scolded from the kitchen. "And stop being selfish. Your sisters need this support." I began spending my free time in the school library researching colleges. Not just any colleges, ones far away from home. I immersed myself in my studies, knowing good grades were my escape route. Every A on my report card represented one step closer to freedom. When my acceptance letter from Berkeley arrived, including a partial scholarship, I felt like I could finally breathe. But my family had different intentions. The community college here has a great business program, Sarah suggested during what they termed a family council, but I considered an intervention. You could live at home and save money and help with the kids, Emma added cheerfully, as if that was an incentive. I glanced around our living room at their expectant faces, Mom, Dad, Sarah, Emma, and Grandma Rose, who had been unusually silent throughout the discussion. Actually, Grandma Rose's voice cut through the tension like a knife. I think Berkeley is perfect for Ruby. Everyone turned to stare at her. The program is precisely what she requires for her future profession, and your grandfather's educational fund will supplement what the scholarship doesn't cover. I could have embraced her at that moment. The family council concluded with my parents and sisters casting disappointed glances in my direction, but I was unconcerned. For the first time in years, I felt a clear vision of my future, and it didn't involve serving as everyone's complimentary childcare provider. College life was everything I had envisioned and more. My dorm room became my haven. My classmates transformed into genuine friends, and for the first time in years, my weekends were my own. No wailing infants, no sticky-fingered toddlers, just me and my choices. However, one cannot entirely evade family obligations, particularly during the holidays. I attempted to minimize my visits, but Thanksgiving and Christmas were non-negotiable. Mom would call weeks in advance, her voice heavy with anticipation. Everyone's inquiring about you, Ruby. The kids miss their aunt. The first Christmas break after I began college, I stepped into utter pandemonium. Sarah now had 2 sons, Tyler and his new baby brother Luke, while Emma had added a son named Max to her family, along with Sophie. But that wasn't even the worst of it. Ruby, Aunt Janet exclaimed the instant I entered the house, immediately directing her 5-year-old twins toward me. The kids have been asking about you. No, they haven't, I thought. They barely know who I am. Before I could object, Cousin Rachel's 7-year-old daughter clung to my leg, followed closely by Cousin Mike's 9-year-old son and 6-year-old daughter. Ruby, honey, Mom called from the kitchen, barely visible behind a mountain of dishes. Why don't you take the kids upstairs to your room? I'll bring up some snacks later. And just like that, I was herding 8 children up the stairs, feeling more like a sheepdog than a university student. My former bedroom became a war zone. Toys scattered everywhere, juice spilled on my childhood bedspread, crayon marks mysteriously appearing on the walls. Hours elapsed, my stomach rumbling as enticing aromas wafted up from downstairs, where the adults were savoring their peaceful holiday meal. When Mom finally appeared with a plate of kid-friendly snacks, she barely made eye contact. By the time I managed to slip downstairs at 8 p.m., after coordinating with various parents to retrieve their exhausted offspring, the dining room was deserted except for dirty dishes and picked-over serving platters. Oh, Ruby, Emma said, already donning her coat. Max was an angel for you, right? We've got to run. It's past his bedtime. Sarah followed suit, gathering her boys while discussing New Year's plans with Mom. Aunt Janet was assisting her twins into their snow boots, while cousins Rachel and Mike were carrying their sleeping children to their cars. Not a single expression of gratitude. Not one inquiry about whether I had eaten. Not even a backward glance as they all filed out, leaving me standing amidst the remnants of Christmas dinner. Ruby, be a dear and help me with these dishes, Mom called from the kitchen, as if I hadn't just spent the entire day doing her a tremendous favor. I gazed at the mountain of dirty plates and serving dishes, evidence of a holiday feast I never had the chance to enjoy. The message from Mom arrived during finals week, just as I was completing my last paper for the semester. My phone buzzed with her customary pre-holiday update, but this one sent chills down my spine. Sarah and Emma are coming with the kids, it read cheerfully, plus Janet and her twins, Rachel's girls, Mike's kids, and exciting news, Sarah's sister-in-law Lisa is joining us with her 3. It'll be such a wonderful Christmas with all the little ones. I calculated in my head, 12 kids. 12. I sat there in the library, staring at my phone until the screen went dark, then lit it up again to ensure I had read it correctly. The message remained unchanged, but something within me finally shifted. 2 years of college had provided me with perspective. I had observed my roommate, Kate, go home for the holidays and return with tales of genuine family time. Board games, movie nights, proper Christmas dinners. My friend Jessica's biggest grievance about going home was having to share the television remote with her siblings. Meanwhile, I had spent every holiday of my adulthood as an unpaid nanny service. I didn't respond to Mom's message. Instead, I packed my bag for Christmas break with an unusual sense of tranquility. For the first time, I wasn't dreading the holidays because I was returning home with a plan. The days leading up to Christmas were deceptively ordinary. I assisted Mom in the kitchen, inhaling the familiar aroma of her signature dishes, pot roast, honey-glazed ham, and her renowned apple pie. I adorned the Christmas tree, meticulously hanging the ornaments I had crafted in elementary school, alongside the elegant glass baubles Mom reserved for the front of the tree. Christmas Day arrived with a flurry of activity. Cars began arriving in our driveway, one after another, each bringing more chaos than the last. Sarah arrived first with her boys, now 5 and 3, followed closely by Emma with Sophie and Max. Lisa, Sarah's sister-in-law, appeared with her 3 children, all under 7. The remaining relatives streamed in after them, each family contributing more children to the burgeoning crowd. I observed from the corner of the living room as the noise level steadily escalated. Sarah made her way towards me, her youngest balanced on her hip, while the older one tugged at her sleeve. "Ruby," she called out with that familiar tone, the one that signaled she was about to relinquish her parental responsibilities. "The boys have been so excited to see you. I eagerly anticipated playing with their beloved aunt. She was already herding them toward me, a familiar maneuver repeated countless times. Yet, this Christmas felt different. This time, I held my position, meeting her gaze directly. "No," I declared, my voice firm despite my racing pulse. "I'm not watching the kids today. I'm here to celebrate Christmas like everyone else." The room didn't descend into absolute silence. Too many children present for that. But I sensed a wave of astonishment ripple through the adults. Sarah's jaw went slack. Mom froze mid-stride, a plate of cookies suspended in her hands. Dad peered over his newspaper, eyebrows raised. "But who's going to supervise all the children?" Emma's anxious voice pierced the living room's festive chatter. As I turned towards the staircase, I glanced back, catching Mom's helpless shrug and the baffled expressions on everyone's faces. The sight almost made me chuckle. They looked as if someone had just announced Christmas was canceled. My feet ascended the familiar steps, past the framed photographs chronicling my sister's numerous accomplishments, and into my childhood bedroom. The gentle click of the door closing behind me felt like the final punctuation mark on a very lengthy sentence. I collapsed onto my bed, the same twin bed I'd had since middle school, and exhaled deeply. Downstairs, the muffled sounds of pandemonium drifted up, the fluctuating volume of adult voices, children's cries, the occasional thud of something dropped or thrown. Can you believe her? So selfish. In my day? The snippets of conversation filtering through the floorboards brought a smile to my face. Let them talk. Let them finally confront the reality of caring for their own offspring. My phone vibrated with a text from Kate. "Did you do it? Did you finally stand up to them?" "Operation Freedom is in progress," I typed back, currently taking refuge in my room while they figure out how to parent their own kids. A knock on my door interrupted my texting. "Ruby." Mom's voice strained for concern, but landed somewhere between irritation and desperation. "The children are asking for you." I remained comfortably settled on the bed. "I'm busy, Mom." Her sigh was audible through the door, followed by the sound of retreating footsteps. Turned to my phone, rejoining a group chat with college friends who were providing live commentary on their own family Christmas dramas. Jessica's uncle was intoxicated again. Mike's grandmother was inquiring about his non-existent girlfriend, and Kate's brother had brought home a surprise girlfriend. 2 hours elapsed in this peaceful rebellion. My phone buzzed constantly with supportive messages from friends who had endured years of my holiday babysitting complaints. The downstairs chaos eventually subsided into a different rhythm, one that didn't involve my participation. When I finally descended the stairs for dinner, the reactions were as if I'd been resurrected. Aunt Janet actually fumbled her fork. Cousin Rachel's mouth hung open mid-sentence. I scanned the dining room, noting Emma's conspicuous absence. Through the living room doorway, I could see her attempting to organize some sort of game with the children, her normally impeccable updo unraveling, a stain of unknown origin marring her festive sweater. Taking my seat at the adult table, a first in recent memory, I surveyed the spread before me. Everything was still warm, still fresh, still waiting to be savored. No lukewarm leftovers, no picked-over remnants, no half-eaten children's portions. I could feel the weight of disapproving stares as I filled my plate with Mom's honey-glazed ham, Aunt Janet's sweet potato casserole, and Cousin Rachel's renowned green bean dish. The clinking of silverware against china couldn't quite mask the tension in the room. I was halfway through enjoying my first proper holiday meal in years when Sarah finally snapped. She'd been observing me eat with the kind of focus typically reserved for nature documentaries about predator and prey. "Well," she announced to the table at large, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "looks like someone's gotten a little too big for their britches at college. Seems they've forgotten all about sisterly duties." I took my time with my spoonful of mashed potatoes, deliberately licking the spoon clean before responding. "The food really is excellent when you get to eat it fresh." "Funny thing about sisterly duties," I replied, keeping my voice even and composed. "I don't recall seeing free babysitter listed in any sisterhood manual. Maybe you could point out that chapter to me, right after the section where parents are supposed to watch their own children." The gasps around the table would have been comical if they weren't so genuine. Aunt Janet actually clutched her pearls. I hadn't realized people actually did that outside of old movies. Cousin Rachel suddenly became very interested in her green beans, while Uncle Mike seemed to be trying to merge with his dinner roll. Mom and Dad exchanged that particular look they had, the one that conveyed disappointment, but a reluctance to create a scene. Dad's fork was frozen midair, and Mom's smile had tightened. But instead of the anticipated lecture, Mom cleared her throat and asked Uncle Mike about his new job. The conversation sputtered back to life, though everyone kept glancing my way as if expecting me to spontaneously generate a second head. I simply continued eating, relishing every bite of food that hadn't been pawed over by small hands or grown cold while I changed diapers. About 20 minutes into dinner, Emma appeared in the doorway, looking like she'd just emerged from a battlefield. Her Christmas sweater now sported what appeared to be juice stains in addition to the previous unidentified mark, and her hair had completely escaped its elegant updo. "Sarah," she called, her voice laced with desperation. "Could you—" Sarah shot me one last scathing glance before pushing back from the table. The sisters switched places, Emma practically collapsing into the vacated chair. She looked utterly exhausted, the kind of bone-weary tired I'd felt every holiday for years. Emma filled her plate mechanically, but couldn't resist glaring at me between bites. I met her gaze and shrugged, then returned to enjoying my dinner. After finishing my meal, including 2 helpings of Mom's apple pie, a luxury I'd never before experienced, I quietly excused myself from the table. No one protested, no one asked me to help clean up, no one demanded I take a turn with the children. Morning light streamed through the living room windows as I descended the stairs, still basking in the afterglow of my peaceful Christmas evening. That feeling vanished the instant I saw them. Mom, Dad, Sarah, and Emma, positioned in a clear ambush formation. Sarah didn't waste any time. "What kind of performance was that yesterday?" she snapped, her voice sharp enough to shatter glass. "Making us look like incompetent parents in front of everyone." I sank into an armchair, surprisingly composed. "Performance? You mean me wanting to enjoy Christmas like everyone else? I'm just tired of being the unpaid, unappreciated babysitter while everyone else gets to have an actual holiday." "But you never complained before," Mom interjected, her brow furrowed in confusion. I couldn't help but laugh. "Never complained? I've been complaining for years, Mom. But it was just too convenient to ignore me, wasn't it? Too easy to keep taking advantage of the good little sister who never rocks the boat." They all began talking at once, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of accusations, reminders of sisterly duty and family obligations. Dad kept mentioning how much they'd done for me over the years. Mom brought up how well they'd raised me, and my sister alternated between guilt trips and outright attacks. I let them exhaust themselves before speaking again. "They're not my children," I stated quietly but firmly. "I didn't give birth to them. I didn't choose to have them. They are your responsibility, not mine. Especially during the holidays, when I'm supposed to be relaxing too." That's when Sarah played what she believed was her winning card. She stood up, her face flushed with anger. Well, maybe it's time someone taught you a lesson about gratitude. Let's see how you manage without mom and dad paying your college tuition. The room fell silent. I watched mom and dad exchange uneasy glances, clearly taken aback by the suggestion. But instead of the panic Sarah expected, I felt a strange sense of relief. Finally, everything was out in the open. I stood up slowly. Actually, Sarah, Grandma's been paying my tuition from Grandpa's education fund. You know, the one he set up for all his granddaughters? The same fund that helped put you through nursing school and Emma through business school. And even if that weren't the case, I have a partial scholarship. Plus, unlike some people, I'm not afraid of working to support myself. Without waiting for their response, I turned and walked upstairs. It took me less than 10 minutes to pack my bag. I'd become proficient at traveling light over the years. As I came back down, Mom and Dad started calling after me, their voices a blend of anger and panic. But I was done talking. I walked out the front door, letting it close behind me on their protests and recriminations. The winter air nipped at my cheeks as I walked to my car, but I barely registered it. The drive back to campus was strangely peaceful. As the miles between me and home increased, I systematically blocked their numbers. Mom, Dad, Sarah, Emma. Each tap on my phone screen felt like breaking another link in a chain I hadn't realized was weighing me down. My dorm room welcomed me back with its blessed simplicity. No toys scattered across the floor, no sticky fingerprints on the windows, no constant background noise of children demanding attention. Just my books, my laptop, and my own thoughts. January passed in a blur of new classes and quiet weekends. February brought snow and a welcome absence of family drama. I immersed myself in my studies, made plans with friends, and for the first time in years felt like I was living my own life, instead of existing in the periphery of everyone else's. Then, one cold Saturday morning in late February, I looked out my dorm window and saw them, Mom, Dad, and Emma, standing in the parking lot, looking uncertain and out of place among the students hurrying to and from classes. My first instinct was to pretend I wasn't home, but something in their demeanor gave me pause. They looked different, smaller somehow, less like authority figures and more like people who had driven 4 hours to right a wrong. I met them in the lobby. Emma spoke first. "Can we buy you coffee? We'd like to talk." The campus cafe was quiet that morning. We sat at a corner table, steam rising from our cups, the silence thick with unspoken words. Mom was the first to break it. "We've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her cup, "after you left. Well, we had some long conversations as a family." "Very long conversations," Emma added, meeting my eyes directly. "Ruby, we were wrong. All of us. We took advantage of you for years and labeled it family duty to ease our own guilt." Dad cleared his throat. "We didn't realize, or perhaps we didn't want to realize, how unjust it was. You deserved your own holidays, your own time. You deserved to be treated like an adult, not the family babysitter." I took a long sip of my coffee, letting their words sink in. "What about Sarah?" Emma sighed. "Sarah? She's still processing. You know how she is. She struggles to admit when she's wrong. But the rest of us, we want to do better. Things will be different now," Mom promised. "No more pushing the kids on you. No more expecting you to sacrifice your holidays. We want you to come home because you want to, not because you're needed for childcare." I studied their faces, the sincerity in Mom's eyes, the regret in Dad's expression, the openness in Emma's posture. "Okay," I said finally. "I believe you." That evening, after they'd left, I unblocked their numbers. Within minutes, I had a text from Emma. "Miss you, little sis. For real this time." The following months brought a new normal. I visited home some weekends, and it was actually enjoyable. When Emma brought her children, she watched them herself or hired a babysitter. Mom stopped trying to orchestrate family bonding moments that always seemed to end with me in charge of a gaggle of kids. Sarah and I still haven't spoken. Sometimes I see her posts on social media, pictures of her boys growing up so quickly. A part of me hopes that one day she'll acknowledge her wrongdoing, that she'll reach out first. Until then, I'm at peace with the distance.